What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Spectrum Show. My name is Spencer, this is Jackson, and this is Sean, and after a long time coming, we have another incredible episode for you all.
That's right, Spencer. We unfortunately had to delay this episode out of February due to certain personal problems, but...
Extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, extenuating circumstances. But we're back to discuss not one, but two of Marvel's recent releases. Specifically, Marvel Animation's first season of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and the latest film from Marvel Studios, Captain America: Brave New World.
Okay, and we just want to say that despite the fact that we're one month late to this, we really hope you enjoyed the big game last month, and congrats to the Philly Eagles on their latest victory.
And congrats to Kendrick Lamar for the funniest halftime show of all time.
Bold statement right there, but 100%, you guys. Between good foods, relatively solid commercials.
I like the Thunderbolts trailer.
Yeah. Thunderbolts trailer was good.
Yeah, and another major, yet unconventional win for Kendrick Lamar. This was a very interesting iteration of the big game, to say the least. Personally, I preferred Lady Gaga's pre-show performance more, and would have rather had Sam Jackson come out in a trench coat and eye patch, but beggars can't be choosers, I should say. So that being said, we're going to take a moment to set up our first segment, and when we get back, we'll jump right into our first Spectrum of Opinions discussion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. We're the cast of The Spectrum Show, and we're moving on to our first Spectrum of Opinions discussion. This time we'll be reviewing Marvel Animation's recently released Disney Plus series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Okay, Spencer, what's your Spectrum of Opinions on the show?
I thought this was actually a very solid Spider-Man show.
I agree, very solid. Easily the best one since Spectacular.
100% agree with that.
Have you seen Spectacular?
I've seen a couple episodes, but...
Well, we're not going to harp on that. Well, we're not going to harp on how good that is. Well, Friendly Neighborhood time.
Yeah, Friendly Neighborhood, very solid story, and very, everything felt like it was just the right amount of everything, I feel like.
Yeah, I have, some stuff that bugs me, but, as a story, it's well told. It has good characters. It has a good arc for Peter. Has just enough granular nerd stuff to tide me over.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, an unfortunately dense amount of teases for season 2.
That is true.
It's not so overwhelming that you get to the end of season 1 and think, wow, that kind of just ended.
Yeah, it's It felt, the whole thing felt very satisfying, and honestly, and everything was all the new stuff was kind of fleshed out enough to make me give enough of a crap to where I was like, okay, this actually is pretty intriguing.
Okay, so for plot, this is kind of another high school Peter Parker thing, which if you ask me, I'm kind of sick of this because every Spider-Man show since Every Spider-Man show from Spectacular onwards has been about him in high school, and we've gotten at this point we've gotten 4 of them. And he was in high school for 23 issues. Then he was in college. We've had over 900 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and that's not even counting Spectacular, Sensational, Web of, Adjectiveless, but for some reason those 23 issues where he was in high school is what everyone fixates on. But if we're that's a very personal thing.
Yeah, and I think, but back to the story, care to explain?
Yeah, no, it's another high school Peter Parker beat, teenager gets bitten by a radioactive spider, great power, great responsibility, great left hook, has to, balance that with his school life and and social life, and, that's not as easy as it seems, but...
Especially if you're a superhero.
But this more than I think I was expecting, plays more like a kind of MCU what if type
riff.
I
was about to say it's
down to having a Watcher cameo in the final episode.
Yes, and I was going to say this is canon, I believe, in the same way that What If is canon.
Yes, because it very clearly calls back to highly specific moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the divergence point here seems to be Oscorp exists, as opposed to the main universe, whereas in No Way Home it was stated that it's not really a thing.
Yeah, which is very, I will say, and Norman Osborn in this show, and we'll actually get to the characters right now, actually.
Yeah, because Norman, the main inflection point here is instead of Tony Stark, Norman Osborn is Peter's mentor.
Played by Coleman Domingo, by the way, Oscar-nominated actor. And I think he did a fantastic job.
Oh, honestly. He's excellent in this.
Yeah, I think like I'm just gonna say it. This has some of the most memorable character moments for Spider-Man shows, especially with the newcomers.
Yeah, no, Domingo is fantastic in this. He rides the line between being a guy like, you could see why Peter really puts his trust in this guy. He's very charming, very charismatic, but
Yeah.
he also rides the line of, this guy has like a hidden agenda that, doesn't really align with what Peter wants to do with his life. And like the show is kind of about Peter finding that out.
Yeah, and I'm also very curious to see how because he's eventually going to become Green Goblin, let's be real.
And they hint at that in this.
Yeah, but I'm very curious to see what his Green Goblin voice sounds like. I'm very curious to find that out.
There's been some like, the old 90s Green Goblin actor is great because the way he transitions from Norman to Goblin will make you like...
I think it's a different actor.
Yeah, no, it will, even though it's the same guy. So I really hope that like if Domingo gets to go fully unhinged, that he can really pull that off.
Yeah, but something tells me it's going to be probably similar to like Willem Dafoe's portrayal because he seems like that kind of performance type, which is not a bad thing by any stretch.
Peter in this show, he does fall into a lot of the tropes of, Peter being a bit of a doormat in high school interpretations that I'm not the biggest fan of, but...
I will say, is it the same voice actor from What If?
Yeah, Hudson Thames.
Yeah. And he does a fantastic job, by the way. He sounds pretty much identical to Tom
He does
Holland.
a good job. I don't know about identical, but
very close.
I mean, he has like, let's just say he has the general vibe of like Tom Holland.
Absolutely.
And the side characters are all good. I like Harry in this. I like Nico in this.
From Runaways, unfortunately not Lyrico Okano, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which would have been nice, honestly.
I do find it funny that a lot of the supporting cast in this show is like not the traditional Spider-Man supporting cast. Like no Flash Thompson, no Liz Allen,
Mary Jane.
No Mary Jane yet. Gwen Stacy has been announced for season 2 as Spider-Gwen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as Spider-Gwen specifically.
Okay, then.
But she's not in this first season.
Do we know who's playing her?
We do not. We do know what her costume looks like.
Okay. But yeah, we also get a lot of other Marvel characters, like hero characters in this.
Yeah, we have some cool cameos from Doctor Strange, played by Robin Atkin Downs, and Daredevil, which is Charlie Cox reprising.
Yeah, which is honestly awesome to see. And he makes I think he does 2 episodes, right?
He has one episode where he and Peter duke it out in a cameo in the last.
Yeah, and that was the Shadowland costume he was in, right?
Shadowland, Charles Soule Daredevil run. Like he wears black costumes in both of them.
Yeah, but it looks like the Shadowland costume.
Yeah, like story-wise, like there's a very like satisfying arc of like Peter, learning his way as a crime fighter, kind of getting his priorities straight. But the surprise standout of the show is actually its secondary protagonist or deutragonist, whatever you want to call it, Lonnie Lincoln.
Who's actually Tombstone.
Traditionally, he's older than Peter and, a career criminal by the time they've already met. But in this, he's, at Peter's high school. He's dating Peter's crush, Pearl Pangan. And he's, you kind of see his arc of, he's a promising young man who really has a future ahead of him, but grew up in a bad neighborhood and has to make tough decisions for his family to get by.
Yeah, that whole arc with him was fantastic in this show.
But he's like slowly kind of manipulated into enjoying like a life of crime and, seeing it as his proper place. And like even, when he kind of rises to the occasion and you kind of like, there's a bit of a triumphant feeling, you feel bad for him because he's being led down the wrong path.
Absolutely, and not to mention you can tell the people he's with. What are they called again?
The 110th Street Gang, I think.
Yeah, 110th Street Gang. I know they're a gang, but they're some nasty people.
I mean, not quite as nasty as the Scorpions.
Well, that's true too, because we actually do see Matt Gargan in this too. He's like,
and I do like that angle of it, of how you can be manipulated or like come to see like one gang being part of a gang is like, a good thing if, you see yourselves in opposition to another gang, even if ultimately like it's still a gang.
Yeah, and there's bad things going to happen on both sides.
Yeah, and Scorpion in this is,
no joke.
Yeah, no, he's no joke. He's a great, threatening, like, main antagonist for most of the series.
And Doc Ock was great, too, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He looked... That was his comic design.
Yeah, no, it's a very, like...
accurate.
It's a very accurate kind of Romita look to him, honestly. I I think the producers and like animators for the show said they were kind of aiming for a old Steve Ditko like
Oh,
comics.
100%. I think they
And
achieved that.
I don't know if they achieve, like, it isn't very specifically Ditko, but I do think, like, in terms of, like, color palette, they're, or, trying to get close to it.
Yeah. And also, if we forgot to mention other Marvel characters, I think what was his name again? The guy who plays Iron Man in that one episode.
Mick Wingert?
Yeah, Mick Wingert.
Yeah, Iron Man shows up for, like, 5 seconds.
But it's still a pleasant surprise after considering we haven't seen him in years.
Mm-hmm. In terms of animation, it's not bad. Like,
It's not perfect.
You know, sometimes like expressions can be flat and motions can be awkward. But overall, like the fight scenes are usually well choreographed at the very least, and that's where the animation really has to step up.
That being said, I will say there is one thing I did notice about the show, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, Sean, but it felt almost too violent for kids, but not violent enough for adults.
Well, I kind of get what you mean by that. Like, Peter does get pretty brutally stabbed in his first fight with Scorpion.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It might be a little intense for kids. So
I mean, I think kids can handle it. You see what they.
I'm sure they can censor it.
I mean, have you seen how many people die in like the actual like pre-translation versions of Power Rangers?
Probably a lot, I'm gonna assume.
Yeah, no, they killed off a bunch of people.
Fair enough. But anyway, Spider-Man. Yeah, this show was fantastic, I think. Is there anything? Oh yeah, there's also a symbiote cam. Yeah.
It's described as a symbiotic creature. It's just like, it's not really Venom, because when I think of Venom, I think, Venom is the symbiote plus like another guy.
Who do we think it's gonna be in season 2?
I mean, there's some interesting ways they could go. They could do it with Harry, because that's kind of like in the cultural zeitgeist right now with Spider-Man 2. They could do Gwen, because traditionally she's used the symbiote as a power source in her comics.
Yeah, it could also go symbiote Spider-Man.
It could be, symbiote Spider-Man, Norman. There's a bunch of different ways you could go for it. And there's also hints that maybe Daredevil's going to have more to do. They teased Finesse as his sidekick in
this. They did.
From Avengers Academy. And she's actually not traditionally his sidekick. She's actually Taskmaster's maybe not daughter.
Oh yeah, I think they're actually and we're gonna see Taskmaster again, MCU version, in Thunderbolts actually. So
though the trailers are making it look like she's not gonna last long.
Oh boy, we'll see.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of hints for season 2, like the symbiote stuff.
Yeah.
Finesse, like Doc Ock getting his arms
properly.
Yeah, there was that tease at the first episode where some other person seems to be might have gotten bitten by the spider. That's probably Gwen.
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, no, someone picks up a backpack that the spider crawls into.
Oh.
Lonnie, completing his descent into, being Tombstone.
Yeah, definitely. Do we think, is there going to be a season?
Which, there was actually a trend I've noticed that I brought up with my friends. The best Spider-Man cartoons. The 90s one, Spectacular. This one, all of them got Tombstone.
That's true.
2017, Ultimate Spider-Man, no Tombstone.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They weren't in those shows. I mean,
At
he
least
wasn't
I
in
don't
those
think he
shows.
was.
I don't think he was in Ultimate. We'll fact check that later.
You want me to fact check?
Yeah, Jackson's gonna fact check that for us. So, is there anything else we want to say about this show? Or
it's not a very complicated show to discuss. It's
the only thing I would say
very straightforward.
That is true, and the only thing I will say that is complicated is the final episode with the Doctor Strange stuff.
I mean, it's not too complicated. It's just like a stable time loop where Peter is the cause of him getting the spider transported back into the past from the future.
I mean, that is a fun twist, I will say.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I just checked, and you're right. Tombstone isn't in Ultimate and isn't in 2017.
What did I tell you?
What did I tell you? Right. Well done, Sean. Well done.
Tombstone's the secret sauce to making a good Spider-Man cartoon.
Or just the characters that no one knows about, I guess.
Well, I mean, Tombstone's not that obscure.
I mean, the more obscure characters.
He's no Fusion, but he's no Green Goblin.
Fair enough.
What was I going to talk about? I am slightly bugged by the implication that Uncle Ben's death, they don't really discuss Uncle Ben this much in the show, but the way that the timeline lines up, it's pretty clear that he died before Peter was even bitten, and I do not like that. Like, I think the great power, great responsibility, Peter feels directly responsible for his uncle dying thing is so important to this character.
Critical, and I didn't even notice that. And there, speaking of people like that, wasn't in the last episode we saw who was the guy in the jail who May was talking to?
Yeah, that was his dad. That's Richard.
That's what I was gonna say.
That's Richard Parker.
Richard Parker,
played by Josh Keaton of Spectacular.
Well, the more you know, folks.
And like to me
that's a huge implication.
Yeah, no, that to me really signifies this is a big what if type thing. And I know a lot of people who were holding their breath when Norman said with great power comes. They were like, oh no, is he gonna be the one who? And then he says respect, and they're like, oh thank God, they're going a good route with this.
It's a little different though, but it's like a cool
the
riff
idea is that he's he's filling a hole that Uncle Ben's early absence is left, and that I think he doesn't really get what Peter's all about, and that's why Peter ultimately ends up saying, look, I'm grateful for your help, but I don't want this. I don't want the stupid identity crisis suits. Yeah, the Future Foundation suit was nice, but that's not me, etc., etc.
I will say, I think he's gonna realize that's gonna come back in a future season. He's gonna be with great power really comes great responsibility.
Maybe he fully forms that in a later season and uses it as a rebuttal. I've heard some people who aren't the biggest Spider-Gwen fans say what they hope in season 2 is that she's going to be like Norman's replacement for Peter going forward.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I wouldn't either.
But it would be interesting. It would be interesting.
As for comics I would recommend to anyone who really likes this show, on the top row here we have the big teenage Spider-Man stories. We have Ultimate Spider-Man, the original Untold Tales, and the original Lee Ditko stuff. Untold Tales takes place in between issues of the original comics, but was published in the 90s. A very recent flashback story called Shadow of the Green Goblin by J.M. DeMatteis, one of the best Spider-Man writers. And for some of the supporting cast, we have Agents of Atlas, which features Amadeus from the lab, Pearl Pangan as Wave, Luna Snow, that lady that Harry had a picture with, and various others like Shang-Chi and Jimmy Woo. We have Superior Foes, if you like kind of the bumbling low-tier criminals that he fights in this and want just a whole book of that.
That's just fun.
We have Runaways.
And don't forget that.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. We have Runaways for anyone who liked Nico, and that's another tease, what her magic powers are.
Yes, it's true.
Her whole history with that. That was the one I most wanted. I'm so mad they're saving that for season 2.
Hopefully they bring in the other Runaways too.
I don't know. Maybe they
do that for season 3. Maybe.
Yeah, no, Molly, Chase, Carolina, Alex.
I'm not going to quote what Jackson just said off camera.
We have Gold Goblin and Osborn, Evil Incarcerated, for anyone who wants some one-on-one Osborn stuff. Gold Goblin is actually Osborn, trying to be good and only half managing.
Okay, fair enough.
And Spider-Girl for anyone who wants and this is mainly for the people who like the high school Spider-Man stuff, but maybe want a different flavor. That's Mayday Parker, Peter's daughter.
Oh.
And, he's very protective of her, doesn't want her to go into the whole vigilante thing. It's a different flavor of the high school era Spider-Man, but with a modern twist.
That's
awesome. It's a very good run.
All right. So
we have a packed table.
Yes, we really do. Anything else we need to do before we wrap up this discussion?
I mean, final thoughts. Very solid show. Dumb nerd crap that only me and the really granular are going to care about. And even then, it doesn't actually make it a bad show.
What would you rate this from 0 to 10?
8 to 8.5.
Yeah, I'd say an 8 too. Actually, I would probably agree with that. So
I did like the development of his suit over time.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the original suit, but I'm so glad we got the classic red and blue represented so well.
Agreed. So yeah, I think we're done with this first discussion.
Shout out to them using the Future Foundation suit, the best Spider-Man alternate suit.
Yeah,
Jackson wanted to shout out the Future
and
Foundation suit.
as for another shout out that Jackson specifically asked me to do, check out the upcoming Runaways tie-in to One World Under Doom, because that's going to be published later this year. Or Rainbow Rowell's Runaways. He really likes Runaways.
Yes, he does. If you remember the Knuckles episode, he said he loved it. But yeah, don't go anywhere because when we come back, we're going to do another Marvel discussion, this time with a movie. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're the cast of The Spectrum Show, and now moving on to our next Spectrum of Opinions discussion. This time we'll be discussing Marvel's recently released film, Captain America: Brave New World. So, Jackson, what are your Spectrum of Opinions on this film?
This was like, personally, I think this is like a completely fine movie, but that's kind of the thing about it. Like, compared to a lot of other of its contemporaries, like, the MCU itself has a pretty consistent set of problems that you can track across a lot of its major movies. Mm-hmm. But even then, those movies are able to a good amount of those movies are able to overcome that kind of problem. And Brave New World has those on top of several other like stacking problems of its own to deal with, and it doesn't quite come together in the end because of that.
Yeah, that's the I do agree with that actually, because like, yes, the film is fine, and actually when I saw the reviews, I thought this film was going to be really, really bad. And honestly,
I was expecting it to be bad since the first test screening info came out, and apparently people were like walking out of the theater.
Yeah, and honestly, it really wasn't that bad, and it's definitely making profits at least.
It was making profit for its first week, and then it cratered into the core of the earth.
I'm just saying, it made more than its budget, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it at least did that. It's still not going to be that much of a gross for it in the end, unfortunately.
But hey, if they can outdo its budget, I think Marvel's probably taking that as a win, honestly.
Yeah, I guess so. They've kind of had it rough recently, so.
Yeah, so they'll take anything at this point.
I know we don't usually give like our scores until the end, but I'd say this is a very like firm 6 out of 10 personally.
Sure, yeah. I actually resaw the film a couple days ago. Our former co-host Preston, he actually enjoyed this way more than I did, and I actually think it's better on a second viewing than it is on a first. Well, but you can be.
I don't really plan to rewatch it anytime soon, so I guess I'll never know.
Fair enough. But yeah, honestly, you want to explain the story of this film?
Okay, so Captain America: Brave New World, or as it should be called, Red Hulk, is on paper about Sam Wilson, but is mainly about Thaddeus Ross, the former U.S. military general turned government official who is now the elected president of the United States. He was previously portrayed by William Hurt in previous MCU films,
but due to his
but is now portrayed by Harrison Ford in this one,
who did a fantastic job, by the way.
I think he did good, but like not super amazing.
I mean,
there's people in this movie I liked more than him. I think he did a good job with the material he was given.
I think everyone did a fine job with what their material was given.
I'll get into my thoughts on certain performances later. Yeah. But this film is President Ross has just been elected to the United States president. Very bad timing when this film released, honestly.
Yeah, didn't think of that one.
So. And the main conflict of the film revolves around two separate things. If you didn't see Eternals, a giant space robot nearly emerged out of the planet but was stopped, and its corpse is sitting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean right now. Oh, is it the Indian Ocean or Pacific Ocean?
Indian Ocean.
In the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And in the comics, it's an Avengers base.
It was an Avengers base in the comics. Their current base is a sentient city, which is really funny.
Yeah.
Anyways, this like big space robot is made of a new metal, at least new to the MCU, called adamantium,
which you might recognize from a little character called Wolverine.
Yeah, it's the thing in Wolverine's claws. This is how it debuts in the MCU. And there's trade disputes between several countries regarding it, namely Japan. I believe it was Japan, France, and the U.S.
France and I think also somewhere in the Middle East was involved too.
No, the Middle East wasn't in this movie at all.
Yeah, it was. When the Congress group was talking to France, I think there was a. Anyways, yeah.
We'll just move on. But the main powers in this trade war, as we focus on,
are the main ones.
Well, it's mainly actually
US
France doesn't really do anything. It's U.S. and Japan mostly.
Yeah, and it actually does make sense because Wolverine had a whole arc in Japan, right?
I guess in a sense it does, but Wolverine isn't in this movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, just for reference material.
Okay, but yeah, there's that trade war going on, and also the leader who is Samuel Stearns.
Tim Blake, played by Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah, he's a Hulk villain in the comics. In this movie, he was in the original Incredible Hulk movie in the MCU,
which was a long time ago.
Yeah, he was just the scientist guy, and after being exposed to gamma radiation, he's been held hostage by Ross. He was held hostage by Ross for a while, who was essentially using him for I think political gain.
I think it was. He said he was dying. He was providing medicine.
Oh
for him.
no, he's not. Oh yeah, he was able to make a special medicine to help Ross,
but unfortunately had gamma in it.
No, it wasn't unfortunate. That was the entire plan.
Oh, well,
he was lacing that.
I meant for unfortunately for Ross.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
Leader was lacing it with gamma radiation from the moment he first gave it to him.
Yeah, and they upped the dosage of gamma on the Leader too, I believe.
Yeah, the Leader's damage dose increased, which mutated him from a regular human into something akin to his comic self, but also something that looks kind of horrifying in its own regard.
I will say, I think I heard something that it was practical effects actually.
It did not look like practical effects to me.
We'll fact check that and we'll put it in
whatever.
post.
Well, no, I'm saying even if it was practical effects, the effects didn't look good.
Fair enough. It didn't look accurate, is what.
Okay, so and then the main plot of this movie is President Ross is trying to deal with this whole adamantium thing. There's an assassination attempt caused by Isaiah Bradley,
played by Carl Lumbly,
the secret Captain America after World War II.
During the Cold War, I believe.
Yeah, during the Cold War. In the comics, he actually is from. In the comics, actually, he did fight in World War II, and there was a bit where he fought Hitler directly, and Hitler tried to get him to join him on the logic of racism against black people in the U.S., which is kind of wild.
Yeah, but then again. Comics, not.
Yeah, once again. So Isaiah is brainwashed by a mysterious source, later revealed to be the Leader, to attempt to assassinate President Ross. So Sam has to prove Isaiah's innocence while also finding out who framed him and dealing with the whole trade war situation. This is a very complicated movie to explain just on...
there's a lot happening.
There's a lot of... honestly, I think that's part of the problem with it.
There's a little too much?
There's several MCU films... There's a lot of MCU films that are very clearly defined by, Infinity War.
A lot
Guy
happening.
wants stones to destroy the universe. Shang-Chi, guy who escaped an order of assassins, has his past come back to haunt him and has to fight his evil dad.
This one's a little more confusing.
A lot of MCU movies have very simple premises.
And you really got to be paying attention with this one.
This one is very, kind of based on a complicated mess of its own that I can see why audiences didn't resonate with it.
Fair enough.
There's a lot of just... And there's, it's very, weird geopolitics stuff while also not really saying anything in that regard.
I will also say... Excuse me. I think the reason that this film... Let's be real. It's not going to live up to The Winter Soldier or Civil War by any stretch.
I hate to say it, but this is the worst Captain America MCU film.
It's definitely the weakest, I will say.
It's
But I was saying,
I feel bad, especially because Sam needs the help. Falcon and Winter Soldier, me and our fellow co-host Sean have talked about this in the past. Falcon and the Winter Soldier should not have been a TV show. That should have been its own. That should have been tightened up, been its own movie. So Sam's transition from Falcon to Captain America is a big cinematic deal, like it should be.
Fair enough.
If they can do an entire movie of Black Panther where Shuri isn't Black Panther until the last act, they can do that for Captain America.
I guess that is a good point. But I will say, it's very interesting you bring up the messy kind of plot stuff, because it's very weird because Civil War had so much going on, but yet it didn't feel overstuffed. This has a lot going on, but it does feel overstuffed.
I feel like in comparison, Civil War has two very direct focuses, actually.
Yeah.
Even though there are subplots weaving in, like the Black Panther stuff and
Spider-Man.
Zemo, the two main driving things are the Winter Soldier. Steve wants to help Bucky.
And Iron Man.
And Iron Man the conflict over Bucky with Steve and Iron Man, and the Sokovia Accords.
Exactly. And
they're two very simple things that the movie builds around.
And not only that, and if that was enough, Black Panther and Spider-Man just stole the show.
The only reason Black Panther is here is is active as a character is because of the Bucky plotline, because Bucky is framed for the assassination of his father, and that leads into him being involved in the conflict. Like,
Exactly.
it flows to, like, things have a more direct cause and effect in Civil War from what I feel this movie kind of had, where honestly a lot of the time in Brave New World things just kind of happen.
Yeah, and I feel like, we probably should have addressed this sooner, but we're actually going to bring this up right now. We've actually turned off comments for this video because, do you want to explain why?
All I'm gonna say is there is some political controversy surrounding this film that has been discussed extensively elsewhere.
We're not going to do that.
And we're not going to get into it here because we're
not the first people to say something, but we don't want to be the next people to say something.
Yeah, we're trying to focus on like the actual review at the moment, even though it is important to discuss that kind of thing, but a lot of people have already discussed it, so.
Fair enough.
All right.
But I will say, honestly, I didn't entirely mind the character. Like, if you don't know who the character is, sure, you could possibly get behind it.
I feel like her actress did, like, a half-decent job. A lot of her line reads felt weird, but there is, like, at least one moment with her that is kind of nice, and that's the, spoiler alert, the cameo with Bucky later in the film.
That was a pleasant surprise for me, honestly.
Honestly, my personal take is that her role as a character could have been cut from the movie in favor of Lila Davis, you know, the president's assistant in that. For anyone who doesn't know, like, she was with the president. She's like that black woman with the president.
But didn't they give her a different name or something?
No, her name is Lila Davis, which is Sam Wilson's original love interest in the Marvel Comics.
Oh.
So she is a pre-established character, and I personally think that, honestly, you could have just cut the other character we're talking about out of the movie to focus on Layla, and it would have made sense because she's already a Captain America character with a deep connection to Sam specifically.
Yes, but at the same time, if you're gonna change a character,
yeah, I know,
like the character we got, like, yeah, I think it was an okay way of doing it. I mean, it does sort of make sense, but I feel like it could have been written a lot better.
I feel like they ultimately shouldn't have really tried to do it. But let's move on from that.
Yeah,
let's move on.
And I think they should have just gotten Florence Pugh to do it, honestly.
Honestly, Yelena being in this movie would be really funny.
Yeah, it would have bring some like balance out everything probably.
Okay, moving on to like actual other actor performances. Danny Ramirez is the best actor and is the best performance in this movie.
Really? I was going to say Carl Lumbly, honestly.
I like Carl Lumbly a lot too, but there's something about Danny Ramirez's take on Joaquin like
he was fun. He was very enjoyable to
honestly,
watch.
He had an uphill battle for me at the start because I kind of hate how the MCU adapted Joaquin.
Yeah, and he was in, just for reference, he was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and they did kind of tease him becoming the Falcon.
For reference, the MCU version of Joaquin is an Air Force pilot who ends up becoming Sam Wilson's like kind of peer and like Sam is his mentor. In the comics, Joaquin Torres is an illegal immigrant from Mexico who is kidnapped by a Nazi scientist and experimented on to become a human-bird hybrid.
But I can see why they didn't.
I personally prefer the comic version because of the more
sciencey route.
Not really the sciencey thing, but the more like politically relevant angle behind the character.
I see.
Joaquin debuted in 2016, 2017, which when you remember what was the discussion of that era, makes a lot of sense as to why his plot is the way it is.
Fair enough.
I didn't really like when the MCU just kind of made him like a military guy. I really do like him in this film, though.
Yeah, he was good in this film.
Even disregarding his changed background, he does feel a lot like the plucky sidekick character he ends up being in the comic.
Kind of like,
and I like
Falcon.
him a lot.
Kind of like how Sam was in Winter Soldier.
I wouldn't really say Sam is plucky. I'd say he's more kind of like a foil to Steve more than anything.
Sure, yeah.
Like they're contemporaries, whereas Falcon is younger than Sam. When Joaquin is younger than Sam and is explicitly his pupil.
Sure, yeah, and I think it's safe to say that for what they were given, I think everyone did the best they could, I think.
Anthony Mackie did a solid job, I personally think, as well.
Yeah, agreed. Honestly,
Sebastian Stan did a really good job in his scene.
There is one character we haven't talked about yet, and it's kind of a major actor, too. Giancarlo Esposito's character, her side Sidewinder, right?
Oh boy, we're getting into Sidewinder.
Because it's a very different version of the character.
Okay, yeah. So in earlier drafts of this movie, the main villains were supposed to be the Serpent Society,
And I noticed
a
that-
group of snake-themed supervillains who have battled Cap on a regular amount of occasions.
I will say, wasn't Seth Rollins supposed to be in this film too?
He was supposed to be one of the Serpent Society members and was cut from the film entirely.
That's a shame.
And personally, I'm pissed about one of the other cuts.
Who was
one
it?
of the Serpent Society members in the comics is Diamondback.
Oh yeah, she was cut too. Yeah.
She is actually a love interest for Steve Rogers in the comics. And when I first heard she was in the movie originally, I was like, she could have been a fun love interest for Sam, potentially.
Hey, swap the what was her? Swap Ruth out for Diamondback, maybe.
She would have fit better. God.
It would have had a more interesting dynamic with Giancarlo.
I find it funny that in the Marvel Snap is like a mobile card game. In the tie-in season did for the movie, Ruth didn't get a card, but Diamondback did, even though she isn't in the movie.
Anyways,
I find that funny.
Yeah, but
anyways, I'm just kind of Anyways,
But I will
instead
say-
of being funny snake-themed terrorists, Giancarlo is just kind of like a generic criminal mastermind.
I will say,
What?
Action scenes?
oh yeah.
We'll move on to the action scene.
But I
Okay,
will
just
say,
a moment.
I will say one last thing. Giancarlo does fit the Captain America vibe. I will say.
I personally think he did a solid job with his material, but then again, his material wasn't much.
Fair enough. But
Okay,
action sequences.
The big highlight of the movie actually was the action for me.
100% agree.
I feel like
Julia Sona.
Julia Sona is kind of a weird director.
He's very-
in a sense. There's a lot of stuff he's done that's good, but also there's a lot of stuff he's done that's
Noticeably bad.
Cloverfield paradox. But I really do like how the action scenes turned out in this film. They feel very kinetic, very fun. And I am mostly talking about the battleship scene.
That was fantastic.
Holy crap, that is an awesome action scene placed in the middle of this movie. That is where I was paying the most attention and having the most fun.
I will say, regarding the action sequences and just the movie in general, it didn't feel like the CG was like over the top. It felt like it was just enough in the sense.
Except for that one scene with Sam talking to the leader that looks like total garbage.
They could have, with the exception of that,
But yeah,
overall-
other than that, like the CG in this does look quite good, I think.
Yeah,
like
they did a lot with a little, I think.
my personal favorite part of the flying scene isn't even the CGI. It's that it's very creative with how they're depicting an aerial fight.
It's a
Sam.
very creative aerial
Like in
action
how
sequence.
Sam and Joaquin are handling this. It's
Yeah.
just fun. It's a fun scene.
Yeah, and one thing we actually didn't talk about, and I don't think the Falcon and the Winter Soldier brought this up, but the wings the vibranium wings he was given from Wakanda, they have the same powers that Black Panther's suit has, if you remember.
Yeah, they glow purple
With the
and
kinetic
can
energy.
can absorb and reflect kinetic energy.
Which I think that's a really fun little surprise, I think.
That's actually kind of a funny thing about that is that Sam has been close buddies with T'Challa in the comics, so
There's
that's
probably
actually
paying homage to that, I would think.
Then again, in the comics, Sam didn't have like metal wings for a while.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he ever has had metal wings. Like, well, no, he does now. I assume he
does now.
For a while, for most of his history, he had like natural wing. I think he had natural wings. I'm not sure. No, it was a glider. It was a glider.
Oh, it was a glider?
Yeah,
That
he
makes
had
sense.
like other kinds of like he's had artificial wings. I'm mistaking because Joaquin in the comics has natural wings.
Yeah. We brought that up a few moments ago, too.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, speaking of comics that didn't get adapted, this movie would have gone up 5 points if they had done Cap Wolf in it.
I don't even know what that is.
So Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers at separate points have been transformed into a werewolf.
Interesting. So they Sonic Unleashed it, basically.
Yes, it's hilarious both times, and I love it.
A good way or a bad way?
It's hilarious usually. Okay, wrap it up,
Anyways,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, so we've covered action, we've covered the actor performances, what did you overall think about the plot and Ross's arc in this movie?
I thought Ross's arc was definitely one of the stronger points of this film, but
I really do feel like this is mostly a Red Hulk movie with Sam crammed into it.
I will say though, it definitely, I think Harrison did the best he could paying homage to William Hurt's performances, because he had a lot of screen time, if you remember, and also we got to see the return of Liv Tyler in this film.
I love the whole thing that came out recently of like Marvel putting out a press statement saying, no, she was on set for this, we promise, and no one believing them because it doesn't look like she's in the scene at all.
That's stupid. I mean, maybe it was just bad cinematography, probably.
Yeah, honest, I don't know which way for sure. I just think it's funny that that's a news story.
But
that's
yeah,
stupid. I do like. I feel like Ross being the central character of this movie is and like actually, it could have worked better. I feel like it does work okay with what they give him.
And also, I just want to address: do you think Red Hulk looked good? Look CG for him? What do you think?
I think it's kind of hard to say with MCU Hulks because they tend to vary pretty heavily. But
yeah, but
I think he looked fine.
Yeah, I will say this is some of the best Hulk action we've gotten in a long time. I think
this really should have just been a Hulk movie.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think they could have called it that at that point.
Yeah, because of Universal and the rights.
Well, but anyways,
God, okay. I will also drop my thesis statement on this movie, which is something only people who read comics in our audience are going to understand. This movie, I will go to my grave believing this film was a 12-issue Red Hulk maxi series pitch by Tom King that they had in the Marvel office around 2017 and reworked into a script.
Huh.
I stand by this. I will never back down on it.
I will say one last thing, and we're going to wrap up and then talk about the comics.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot.
We have been, and I will say one post-credit scene, which is interesting, but it's not what I was expecting.
God, the post-credit scene is so lame.
It could have been. Honestly, I do agree. There would have been.
It's
so
literally
much more
just
potential.
the multiverse is coming, Sam. The multiverse is coming. I'm like, we know the multiverse is here. It has been here for the past few MCU movies.
I mean, but to be fair, not the Earthbound. Most of the Earthbound Avengers don't know that.
At the same time, though, please just
if you're gonna just.
God, it's such a stupid post-credit scene.
I actually heard something very interesting from, I think Julius Ona said that was intended to not just do that. I think it was intended to also do something else too. Like they were supposed to set up like the 616 Illuminati as well.
If this movie actually set up the Illuminati in the MCU, I would drop it by a point.
Really?
Because this is the stupidest possible movie to try and do that in.
It should have. I do agree. I think the post-credit scene should have been I mean, for what it was, I mean, they had to set something up at this point.
We already know what's coming. You've been setting it up for the past 5 movies.
I get that, but like the point is like I do agree a different scene would have been a little. I think they did say there was supposed to be a teaser for like Red She-Hulk or something like that. Or like they scrapped it?
The teaser was actually for Amadeus Cho.
Really?
Amadeus Cho, who is also in
Spider-Man.
He in the comics became the Hulk for a while when Banner had retired.
That would have actually been it could have tied into Spider-Man a little bit.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a post-credit scene tease and was excised from the film. We don't know why. We don't know who played him. We know nothing.
We don't even know who played him.
We might know who played him. We'll fact check that later.
Yeah, we'll put that in post.
Anyways, we can also recommend Agent of Atlas again for another thing, even though it isn't in this movie. But okay.
Anyways,
comics. On to comics.
Logan Kim.
Logan. Oh, that's right, Logan Kim. I remember hearing that.
We do know the actor. Logan Kim was supposed to play Amadeus Cho.
Fascinating.
But his post-credit scene was cut from the movie. Honestly, would have been a better post-credit scene than the one we got.
They'll probably put it in the extras for like Disney Plus and stuff like that. I hope so, at least.
If he shows up in like Ironheart, I'm gonna laugh really hard.
I don't. For some reason, I don't think so. Anyways.
Okay, on to comics. One thing I will say leading into this one last criticism of the movie. It is kind of shocking how weirdly apolitical like Brave New World as a film is, and I think that's partially just because they weren't really thinking about it that hard, and it came out at the exact wrong time.
Fair enough.
Okay, but
comics.
If you're looking for some really like interesting takes on characters and Marvel characters that go into like political details that the movie doesn't, first of all, we have Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates. He is best known beyond his journalism work as a writer of Black Panther.
There you go.
And he deals a lot with themes of race and racism, especially in modern America. And this run is specifically dealing with a bunch of that, and also Red Hulk is in it for a little bit.
There you go.
Next, we have another one I brought in, United States of Captain America. This one focuses on a continent-spanning mystery where Steve Rogers, Sam Wilson, and John Walker and Bucky Barnes have to team up to stop it, and discover the Captain's Network, a group of Captain Americas who have kind of sprung up as grassroots across the country. I find it's a really fun premise, and it gives rise to a lot of new and diverse versions of the character.
Oh. And then in the middle,
we have our last Captain America recommendation, Captain America: Symbol of Truth by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is the most recent Sam Wilson ongoing series. He has a mini coming out right now, but this is a series essentially just having Sam do what he does. Deadpool is in it. He deals with Wakanda for a good chunk of this, so there's more of that if you're curious. And Joaquin is in here too. So
that sounds like a really good comic run, actually.
It's the main issue with it is it ties in very heavily to its sister series, so you kind of need to read both. But this first volume is standalone enough to read on its own.
Fair enough. And then we have the Hulk ones.
We also have some Hulk recommendations. Red Hulk by Jeff Parker. This is an arc after Red Hulk's introduction where he gets the absolute crap beaten out of him by everyone he beat up in his introductory arc. It's really fun. Parker has a great take on the character, and on that note, there's also a Red Hulk run that just started this week by Benjamin Percy and Jeff Shaw, and you can go to your comic shop and get it right now.
Yeah. And
lastly, Immortal Hulk. Sean brought in the European edition of it, which is kind of funny.
Cool.
Immortal Hulk is the single most politically driven comic we brought in today.
Really?
And I'm not even kidding. It's written by Al Ewing and drawn by an artist we won't mention.
Fair enough.
The artist has some really sketchy stuff around him, so get it secondhand if you can. Immortal Hulk deals with a lot of very contemporary issues, especially relating to stuff that I think you would probably like to read if you were disappointed by Brave New World's apoliticalness.
Fair enough. So
it's also just a cool Hulk story where we learn more about his lore.
And the leader, too, apparently.
The leader is a very major presence in this run, and which is why Sean brought it in. So
yes.
Yeah.
I would say, are we good to wrap up? But I think we've been rambling on a little too long here.
I had a lot to say about this
movie. Yes, you did. So
all right, we're sorry for all the time that took, and
we rambled on.
Thank you so much for listening.
So we hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll wrap up this episode. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Well, guys, it may have taken us a while, but I think we've had another fantastic episode. What do you guys think?
I couldn't agree more. So that being said, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we had making it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, share this video with your friends and family, and subscribe to our YouTube channel with notifications on so you don't miss any content we put out.
Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Threads, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitch, join our Discord server, and become a member on Patreon for just $1 a month. Get access to exclusive content you can't get anywhere else, and also be sure to check our upcoming BlueSky account. We'll be planning on it later this month.
I hope we finally get some Patreon exclusive content soon.
Hopefully by the end of next month. But also be sure to tune into our next episode as we got another throwback review that I would say is quite forceful. And also we're moving one of our plans for April into our March episode. So that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Until our next episode, good night, everybody.
Don't like this guy's attitude. Keep him locked up for longer so he knows his place. And he's like, wait, what? But you need me, though. No!